Hello everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for our first ever research collaborative meeting hosted by our team here at the Michigan Virtual Learning Research Institute, or MVLRI. Just a short disclaimer here before we get started. We just want to share some important information about the recording of the meeting itself. This webinar will be recorded and shared publicly. Consequently, anything shared during this webinar, including chat comments, could be shared publicly. This webinar may represent a presenter's or an attendee's personal views, opinions, conclusions, and other information which do not necessarily reflect those of MVU and/or the Michigan Virtual Learning Research Institute, and are not given nor endorsed by MVU, MVLRI unless otherwise specified. And here's our agenda for today. Since this is our first collaborative meeting, we'll talk a bit about ourselves so you know who we are and what we're trying to cultivate in the research community. We'll also talk about the purpose of the collaborative meetings themselves. Then we'll start with the meeting, including the business portion where everyone can share their opportunities for collaboration as well as ask questions about their current research. Finally, we'll finish up with two 15-minute presentations, at which time we'll introduce our presenters, Elena Geiser Hogan from Orange County Public Schools and Beth Robelia of Walden University. And finally, we'll take time to wrap up and preview upcoming events and some other work as well. So first, a little information about MVLRI, or as we call it more simply, the Institute. In 2012, the governor and Michigan legislature passed legislation requiring the Michigan Virtual University, or MVU, to establish a center for online learning research and innovation, and through this center, directed MVU to work on a variety of different projects. The center, now formally known as the Michigan Virtual Learning Research Institute, or MVLRI, is a natural extension of the work of MVU. The goal of MVLRI is to expand Michigan's capacity to support new learning models, engage in active research to inform new policies in online and blended learning, and strengthen the state's infrastructures for sharing best practices. If you'd like to learn more about us and the work that we do, we encourage you to visit mvlri.org. And these are the folks that make up our team. There are 5 of us here at the Institute, including our Executive Director, Joe Friedoff, me, our Research Associate, Justin Bruno, our researcher, Kristen DeBruler, our Senior Researcher, Catherine Kennedy, and our Proposal and Content Writer, Rebecca Stimson. We strive as part of our mission to work together to cultivate the research community and to inform the field of K-12 blended and online learning, with these collaborative meetings being integral to that mission. And with that, I'll turn it over to Catherine, who will talk more specifically about these collaborative meetings and what we aim to accomplish through them.
Thanks so much, Justin, and welcome everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay, perfect. So I'm going to move this slide up. So the collaborative meetings are going to be held quarterly. This one, as Justin mentioned, is our first one. The tentative months for the winter, spring, and summer meetings of the collaborative are shown here. Eventually, we'd also like to coordinate get-togethers at conferences such as the one next week, INACOL, that's coming up throughout the year so that researchers can connect. So the collaborative meeting is essentially a space for researchers to come together, get feedback on their work, and share opportunities for collaborations for grants, research, publications, presentations, jobs, fellowships, etc. The sharing collaboration opportunities is the business part of the meeting. And then the second part of the meeting is set aside for 2 presenters who have 15 minutes to talk about research that they're doing, and then ask for feedback specific to what they need from the audience. And so a month before the collaborative meetings take place, we'll be sending out a call for presenters just as we did this time around. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start the business part of the meeting. And the first part is about collaboration opportunities as it comes to grants. So if anybody has anything to share about grant opportunities, please go ahead and take the mic. And Justin, if you can make sure everybody is enabled with their mics, that would be great. So if you don't have your mic, please feel free to share opportunities in the chat box, and we can share them out over mic. All right, so I don't see anybody typing and I don't see anybody grabbing their mic, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next piece, which is collaboration opportunities specific to research. We just received an email, maybe most of you have as well, from IES regarding their need for feedback on 2 research centers' work, the National Center for Education Research and the National Center for Special Education Research. And those are due October 31st. They're looking for 3 particular special interest areas. One is the characteristics of education and special education studies that have had the most influence on policy and practice, and the lessons these studies offer for future work, as well as critical problems or issues on which new research is needed. And then finally, recommendations on how to target research funding to do the most good for the field. So if you want more information about that, they are due Friday, October 31st. And yes, Susan, that's correct. They're asking for research reviews. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jason Sicko. He has an opportunity regarding call for participants for studies he's working on.
Okay, can everybody hear me real quick? Just somebody give me a yes. Okay. Hi, as introduced, my name is Dr. Jason Sicko. I'm Assistant Professor of Educational Technology at Grand Valley State University in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And my current research interest is developing a series of modules that help improve soft skills for online learning. And it is based off a survey instrument called the Educational Success Prediction Instrument, or the ESPRI. What this has been shown to do, or this survey has been able to predict success in online courses with about 90% accuracy rate. So my slant on the research is to use that survey as a screening tool and then identify those students who perform poorly on the survey, or I guess as put, maybe be at risk for failure in an online course, and then direct them to these soft skills modules to help improve their soft skills for online readiness. What I need at this point is participants and research sites, and this can be at any phase of the research. Right now, I have the modules in more of a beta test. So basically, I want students to kind of review them and provide feedback. But if anybody is interested and or capable of having students go through the whole process where they would take the survey, we can look at their scores, see how they responded to the survey, and then direct them to specific modules, that would be great. So just kind of reading some of the questions here, what grade level is the tool being used for? I would say primarily high school. Although I don't see it being limited to that, although I think the way the modules are written or worded would be for high school students. Just kind of waiting here for any additional questions. Yes, Susan, I think that would probably line up quite well. As if you're familiar with the ESPRI, it looks at technology, self-efficacy, achievement beliefs, academic risk-taking beliefs, and organizational skills. So some of that does fall under the locus of control umbrella. So I'm going to leave my email address in the chat bar if anybody is interested in contacting me for potential opportunities. I would appreciate it. And that's all I have right now. So I'll pass it back unless people have specific questions for me.
Thanks so much, Jason. And Jason actually emailed us prior to the meeting to get added onto the agenda. So if anyone else would like to do that for future collaborative meetings, we'd be happy to add you to the agenda itself. Is there anyone else that'd like to share opportunities or anything about research-related collaboration opportunities? All right, I'm going to go ahead and move forward to collaboration opportunities when it comes to publications. I'll share or have everyone else share first. Does anybody have any opportunities that they'd like to share about? Looks like Susan Lowe's wants to work with anybody doing data mining. Elena, that's a great topic, and I see that Dennis Beck is here. I know he's done some work in that area, and Jason LaFrance was supposed to be here as well. That's another one that you could contact as well. Beth, I saw your question about who is guest, and that is Sue Verma. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the other opportunities while there's still some conversation going on in the chat box. So the first one is on the Journal of Online Learning Research. It's published by AACE. It's peer-reviewed quarterly publication. The first issue will be published in spring of 2015, and it is an international journal devoted to the theoretical, empirical, and pragmatic understanding of technologies and their impact on primary and secondary pedagogy and policy in primary and secondary K-12 online and blended environments. If you'd like to submit your work, go to aace.org/pubs. The link to YouTube that I'm going to paste now into the chat box is a recent webinar that we did here at MVLRI that talks about the journal itself as well and the publication process. And also, we do have special issue options. If you are interested in submitting a special issue, you can include a proposal with a topic, description of the special issue, as well as the relevance of the topic to the field, a timeline for the special issue, and the curriculum vitae of the guest editors. And also, if you have ideas on potential authors, that would be great as well. To include that on the proposal. The next opportunity is the Handbook of Research in K-12 Online and Blended Learning, and the anticipated publication for that is November 2014. Actually, next week we're hoping to announce it at iNACOL Symposium, so we are very happy to let you know that. I just saw the cover this morning. It's a book that has been edited by Rick Ferdig and myself, and we have a ton of authors whose work is published in that handbook. It's going to be updated every year, and it's open access, published by Carnegie Mellon's ETC Press, and there's going to be a call for chapters every year, and for next year's edition, that call is going to be coming soon. It'll actually be out when the handbook has been published. If you have any questions specific, please go ahead and email us at handbookresearch@gmail.org. Another option is the eLearn magazine. It's published by the Association for Computing Machinery and has a section of their magazine solely devoted to K-12 online and blended learning. It is also an open access magazine. You can see a theme here for open access with international reach. Article lengths usually cannot be over 2,000 words. The editors look for a variety of types of articles, including but not limited to opinion editorials, how-to or instructional articles, case studies that are not promotional in nature, research articles, reviews of books, conferences, tutorials, software, hardware, etc., and interviews with leading professionals in the field, as well as articles that explore a specific area or angle of e-learning in the field, especially instructional design, online instruction, and training. The content that is submitted must help to foster communication between practitioners and researchers. For more information, please feel free to visit the link on the screen, and I'm going to go ahead and paste that also into the chat box as well. And it looks like Michael wants, the book that Tom and Michael are going to be publishing. It's an edited book for a series of journals, and it looks like he's looking for someone to review his book. So make sure to do that review and then send it on over to eLearn Magazine for publication. Thanks, Michael. And finally, we have an opportunity here at MVLRI. We started a blog not too long ago, and we are posting about once a week. If you have anything that you'd like to share, please let us know. Items can include anything from notifying the community about recent publications or call for proposals or papers. We also are providing recordings of the webinars, sharing thoughts about current topics in the field, and publish mini versions of articles. I know Jason Psycho has done that as well. We are doing a call for guest bloggers coming up pretty soon. I believe it might be already posted on mvlri.org/blog. So check that out if you want to become a guest blogger for MVLRI. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to collaboration opportunities in terms of presentations. Is there anyone that has anything that they'd like to share about collaboration opportunities for upcoming presentations? All right, I'm going to go ahead and share the two opportunities that we know of. Let's see. MVLRI webinar series. We are always looking for people to propose and present for the webinars. So our timing is very flexible, and the platform to present is available all throughout the year. The webinars can be formal webinars on your finished research, or can be informal webinars on works in progress. These webinars take place in Adobe Connect and are recorded and shared with the research community just like this one via our social media sites and email listservs. So let us know if you are interested in being one of our upcoming presenters. We are also going to be starting a vodcast and podcasting series that will post to the blog and social media sites. So if you are interested in doing that as well, these can be opportunities for you to share your research questions and thoughts about a certain topic, also to interview other researchers and practitioners in the field or something else. So go ahead and send us a proposal at mvlri@mivu.org, and we'll be in touch. So now we're going on to the collaboration opportunities for other opportunities that don't fit into the ones that have come before. I'm going to go ahead and open it up first for everyone else to share. Oh, great question, Michael, and it looks like Joe's already started. It's really on demand based on folks who are available to present. So they're, like we said, they're really flexible. If you have something to present for 15, 20, 30 minutes or 45 minutes to an hour, anytime, just let us know and we can schedule it. All right, so as people are typing, I'm going to go ahead and move on to some opportunities that we have right now. So MVU dedicates staff members to MVLRI projects, and we also augment our capacity through a fellows program where we draw from state, national, and international experts in K-12 online learning. So our fellows receive a one-year appointment and are selected based on the alignment of their strengths with our priorities for the year. With the honor of being a fellow, fellows are also given a small honorarium depending on the scope and length of their project deliverables. In order to expand this effort, we have created an RFP process so that researchers can apply for fellows positions. It is located on our website and under the About Us tab and under Fellows. So if you are interested in becoming a fellow and you have a project in mind, please feel free to look at that call for proposals. and we'd be happy to let you know. I think it's within a month that we let people know whether their project is accepted. Another opportunity is, of course, our clearinghouse. As you may already know, MVLRI partnered with INACOL to build a research clearinghouse for K-12 blended and online learning, and there are currently over 675 references, incredible, in the searchable database. We also have project contributors that contribute references on a regular basis to keep the database up to date with the latest publications. So if you know of any organizations that might be interested in being a project contributor, please let us know. Also, if you see anything that's missing within the database, especially your own work, please let us know as well. The final part of the business meeting is questions about research. So if anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask in general about something that they're working on, this is the time to go ahead and ask those questions. And feel free to use the microphones if you do have one. Dennis asked if anyone has experience working with large data sets. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. I know that there's some conversations going on in the chat box, but I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to today's presenters. Justin's going to go ahead and introduce them. I will, and if you want to keep the chat going, that's completely fine. We'll go ahead and publish that within the archive link so that everybody has access to that. But to make sure that our presenters have enough time, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Justin.
Thanks, Catherine. As she said, I will go ahead and introduce our presenters. Elena Geiser Hogan earned her EDS in Educational Leadership from National Louis University in 2010. She is currently in the final year of her EDD candidacy at the University of Central Florida, working toward her EDD in Education with a specialization in e-learning. Elena has 8 years of education experience, and half of that time has been spent specifically in virtual education. Elena lives in Mount Dora, Florida, with her husband of 5 years and 3 dachshunds, Rascal, Dale, and Mayberry. Beth Robelia is a contributing faculty member at Walden University, as well as a full-time faculty member of an online high school. She has been working with teachers and students for more than 2 decades. She has worked in outdoor and indoor educational contexts to support diverse learners. Her research interests are in online education, STEM learning, and how social media can support students in academics. Beth began her career in education with Outward Bound as sailing and canoe instructor. She earned her Ph.D. in 2008 from the University of Minnesota in Curriculum and Instruction, STEM education. For the presentations, we've asked the presenters to decide how to organize their time for the 15 minutes that they're allotted. So Elena, you're up first, so I will turn it over to you.
All right, hi everyone. If you can hear me, please go ahead and give me a smiley face. Okay, I think I'm seeing some smiley faces. I'm having some issues with the chat box there, but all right. And I just wanted to mention what a small world it is, because that's when I saw your picture. I was like, oh my gosh, we ate lunch last year together at the first day of the Idea Call conference. How funny. So nice to see you here. So let's go ahead and get started. So as the presentation kind of mentioned earlier, I am working on my dissertation in practice, and I am fully employed with Orange County Virtual School currently, Orange County, Florida, for those of you who aren't familiar. The presentation that I shared today is part of what I've been working on for a while now. So Milestone 2, if you have any concerns about that, it's just part of how I basically titled this for one of my presentations for school. And again, been working on this for almost 3 years now, and currently I'm actually in the process of using the webcam proctoring system this week for the first time. I'm going to go ahead and get into more detail on that in a minute. But basically, overall, my presentation is on rethinking assessment in full-time online schools, best practices in meeting state and district-wide mandatory formative testing. So just to give you some background, as I mentioned, I work for Orange County Virtual School. We are a franchise of Florida Virtual School, and in the state of Florida, basically every district is required to offer 3 different virtual school options per grade level. So we consider Orange County Virtual School, the franchise of Florida Virtual School, the full-time program, and we have teachers from our public school district working for us, basically from home. In the beginning, we're in our 4th year currently. In the very beginning of our program, all the teachers work from home, students work from home, and testing that was required by the state, basically students would go out to their zoned high schools or middle schools and take the tests there. So obviously there were some a variety of situations, if you are able to kind of read this as I'm talking, with students going back to their zone school. For example, one of the main problems of this practice was that zone schools miscoded students' tests, and data was often lost in the process. Well, unfortunately, the poor testing coordinators at their zone schools are quite overwhelmed, and I'm the testing coordinator currently for my school, so I can definitely speak on their behalf. There's a variety of virtual programs, as I mentioned earlier. So Florida Virtual School, Orange County Virtual School, there's the virtual instruction program. So sometimes students and parents are even confused which program they're in when they walk into their zone school. So of course, that leaves a lot of room for error in way of coding or miscoding that test data. And then another issue would be that many students left their zone schools to avoid situations that cause them anxiety, perhaps a bullying situation, and for them to have to go back to that location where they're just not comfortable just doesn't really seem to make sense. So let's go ahead and zoom forward a little bit. Now we're currently in the just as I'm moving forward on this timeline, 2013-14 school year. We were able to secure a physical testing location, and we brought students in for all of those required formative and then summative end of the year tests as well, which was excellent. But the current problem of practice now is that a lot of times I get parents and students calling with regard to conflicts of testing dates. I don't have transportation, and unfortunately we do not have the budget to offer transportation as a full-time virtual school. So this is the current problem of practice, and the solution, the proposed solution, came about a little over a year ago, and I started looking into researching webcam proctors, which based on my research has really not been done in a K-12 setting, such as Orange County Virtual School. So I am definitely interested to hear your feedback on that. So if you would, go ahead and type in the chat box if you have any suggestions on resources for me, that would be fabulous. Most of my research so far has really been based off of post-secondary use of webcam proctoring. Here is the current plan. As I mentioned, I am actually working on this as of this week, but you can see it started officially back in February. Basically, I began to research the different solutions to this problem of practice. I got in touch with a lot of different local virtual schools and different webcam proctoring systems and companies, organizations. I researched a variety because there were different options, and I determined that Software Secure was the best fit for our school. Just to give you a little background on the webcam proctoring systems, like for example, ProctorU is a wonderful, pretty well known. I know they were at the iNACOL conference last year. The reason like someone like them didn't work for our school was just because you had to schedule your test about 3 days in advance, and for 6th through 12th grade students, that's a challenge to be that organized, that advanced, and then have to go ahead and like we would pay for each of those tests as a school. So of course, if they scheduled that exam and then didn't show up, that would have been a disaster. So basically, Software Secure has on-demand testing. They can test anytime within the testing window that I've given them, which I said earlier is this week currently. So I've been answering tons of emails with all these questions because we're just piloting this program for the first time, even though of course detailed emails were sent out prior. Let me go ahead and get back to my timeline here. So April and May, I conducted those interviews, collected data with different districts and secure testing companies, as I mentioned earlier. I actually met face-to-face with other districts in Florida, public school districts. We meet every year at a conference, and we have a lot in common. Just like when you meet everyone at iNACOL, everyone's working or focused on K-12 online learning, kind of from different aspects. But within Florida, as I mentioned, just because we have state statutes that we all need to abide by, there's just a lot more commonality. So it was really interesting to see all the variety of secure testing that's going on. But for the most part, it's just that face-to-face practice that's been taking place. And a lot of the districts across the state are having similar issues to our district, Orange County. In May, I held a meeting with the district testing coordinator, of course, to get approval on this piloting system, along with my school principal. And once that was approved, I went ahead and presented this initial problem of practice at a presentation for the University of Central Florida, as I'm kind of working in conjunction, of course, with them, since it's my dissertation topic, as well as my job to be a testing coordinator for Orange County Virtual School. And then in the summer, I really focused in on the literature that's available. As I mentioned, this is kind of an area of conflict, I guess you could say, for me. I really haven't found a lot of great, strong research to support my project. So again, if you have any suggestions on academic journals, or if you know of any authors that have already studied this topic, that would be fabulous. If you would be willing to share that information, I would greatly appreciate it. I have narrowed down, as I mentioned here, this is where we currently are, October. I'm in the process of the actual action research now. So what I'm doing after this week is basically collecting some data. I am going to work on evaluation questions, and this is going to be more of an evaluative study at the end of each testing period, which there are only 2, October and January for this school year. I plan on sending out surveys to students, parents, faculty, just to kind of get an overall feel for the process and get some feedback. And then, of course, reevaluate, adjust for January, of course, after this first session for January, and then again for the following school year, and kind of see what we can do better. So that's really the data that I'm looking to collect overall. It's really more of a qualitative study. And I feel like I'm going to run out of time, so I don't want to be too redundant here. I did do some analysis from different frames of organizational problems. So basically, if you're familiar with Bowman and Deal, they have their 4 frames: symbolic, HR, symbolic, HR, and political frame. And I am just blanking on the last one off the top of my head. But basically, I just looked at the problem of practice here within my organization from these 4 different frames. And it's pretty, structural was the 4th. So pretty much you can see that there are lots of connections from these different angles of where this problem is stemming from. It's really from all 4 angles. And that's where my research kind of has begun thus far. I narrowed down the official problem of practice to be worded as such as the first school of its kind in a large urban public school district. Standard policies and procedures intended for traditional brick and mortar schools do not fit the structure of this new learning environment. Again, some interesting quotes that I found. You can go ahead and take a quick look over those. It's just a little weary because a lot of these sources are not from academic journals or peer-reviewed journals, so it's a little tricky to go ahead and, of course, include that in your actual research. So that's where I'm kind of trying to hone in currently, just to add to what I've begun this summer. I'm going to go ahead and move forward here. Just a little bit of data where I started to kind of gather from parent surveys from the past, and they look pretty similar from the past 2 years. Just a reminder, we are currently in our 4th year, so we're a pretty new school, as I would imagine most virtual schools are in the K-12 environment. So you can see that the majority of students and parents choose this school of choice, our full-time virtual school program in our district, for greater time flexibility. So unfortunately, to mandate that students come in for face-to-face testing during a very specific window of time really is a big challenge, and that's where this whole problem of practice stems from. Just to kind of give you more specifics, if you're not familiar with the testing in Florida, some examples. Last year, the tests consisted of benchmark tests, which are given throughout the school year to measure student growth. These are formative because they're given to students in reading and math, and the teachers are the ones looking at the data solely to see where they need to strengthen their curriculum and what type of enrichment should be provided in addition to intervention. This year, as I mentioned, this has been narrowed down to 2 testing windows. That's something new. The state of Florida has recently retired their FCAT, or their Florida Comprehensive Assessment, which was the test for, I want to say, about 15 years off the top of my head. It was around when I was in elementary school, so it's been around for quite a while, and it was just retired this year. They basically replaced that test because of all the Common Core standards going through, and then of course Florida has switched over to FSA, or Florida Standards Assessment, or the Florida Standards. Now we're using FSA, which is the Florida Standards Assessment, to replace FCAT, and the test has been completely revamped. In addition to that, we have end of course exams for all subject areas for all grades in the state of Florida. So that is something new as well. Last year we did have the end of course exams for the state, so they were put out by the state and they're secure documents, and all of just the difference there is that your state EOC or end of course exams include like Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, Biology, usually your upper level courses required to graduate. The end of course exams that they've currently put in place that are required now by all subject areas, if they weren't put out by the state, one of the 7 that were put out by the state, then they are created by the district and then implemented that way through the teachers. So just to kind of put this in perspective for our school, these are all the different tests and all the times that students would have to come in for face-to-face testing. So I'm not going to get into the detail of all of these different tests, but you can see that if you're a parent or guardian of one of these students and you chose the virtual school option, the full-time virtual school option, thinking that they could work from home exclusively, or maybe they're traveling a lot, coming back to school this often for face-to-face testing is just not convenient, and it's very conflicting with the mission and the purpose of a full-time virtual school. As mentioned earlier, the data that I am collecting is really going to be mostly qualitative. I'm looking to gather information from surveys from students and parents. I'm definitely going to interview as well. I was planning on doing some comparison between other districts, but I think that at this point I've kind of ruled that out. It would be something that would be for a future study. In addition, test results would be a fabulous study, but that's not going to be my area of focus for this particular dissertation. I am going to look at participation numbers, as that is really important. And as I mentioned, since I'm currently working on this week, I've been interested to see that I've had a good, I would say a good handful of students and parents that are just not interested in using the webcam proctor. Although I've had a lot of positive feedback, some are just not interested and they don't want their student to be their child to be recorded. Of course, since they're all underage, they're minors, we do have to have a parent waiver filled out, which is part of the digital process in accessing the test. So if they refuse to sign that, then we have to, of course, offer face-to-face testing. So I was interested to see that I've had quite a few inquiries about that already. So if you have any additional questions, feel free to contact me. This is my University of Central Florida email address. And as mentioned earlier, any sort of input on research that you might be familiar with that would help support this study would be greatly appreciated. Now I'll just go ahead and see if you have any questions. I think I might be really close to my time, if not over. I unfortunately can't see the chat box questions, but I know I talked to Justin earlier and I had also talked to Catherine, so if you guys see any questions, I cannot see them in the chat box, so if you don't mind just reading them aloud, I'd be happy to answer those. Okay, just got a question from Laura Hibbard. Thank you for sharing that, Justin. At my online school, they require all teachers to participate in all testing windows. We open sites across the state, so I'm running a site this week and next in my smaller rural town for high school students, even though I teach 5th grade. All of these testing windows really affect my students' education since I'm out of the office for so many weeks. I absolutely agree. She said she's out of her office for so many weeks. This is yet another issue with all of the required testing. And I don't know if you said what state you're in, but even if you're not in Florida, I'm sure this is something that's happening across the country with all the required testing and taking students out of their, their regular routines that they've established. They have pace charts that they use oftentimes in their virtual school curriculum. It just really throws everyone off because they don't typically include, flexibility in their schedules for testing, and then then they have to either go back home and make up tests, or they have to or not tests, they have to make up their classwork, or they fall behind. Their teachers are of course trying to keep them with that same schedule as well. So I completely understand. Oh, okay, thank you. Laura is in Ohio, so yeah, it's really the same across many states. I would be interested to see if this was not an issue in one of the states. So thank you for your comment, Laura. And if there are any other questions, as I mentioned, go ahead and feel free to contact me at that email address listed there. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Hi, this is Beth Robelia. Hopefully you can all hear me. I am from Walden University. I teach a couple of classes there, and I guide graduate students through the dissertation process. I received a grant from Walden University, a faculty research initiative grant to look at promising practices for online student engagement. And this part of the research is going to be kind of some not so promising things that I found in the course of my research. But for this research, the definition of engagement that I chose was energy in action. It's from Skinner and Fitzer 2012. Yes, exactly. And kind of the working definition of engagement, what we see in schools is behavioral. Are you showing up? Do you get your work done? Emotional, school is a priority in your life. You have a supportive network of people who help you out with school. You have academic engagement, which means you produce quality work and you have relatively timely completion, which we'll talk more about in a minute here. My research questions looked at demographic factors that are correlated with engagement, so similar to some of the folks kind of looking at predictive factors of who's going to succeed in an online environment. But research question 2, specifically 2B, is really what I'm going to speak about today. I'll be talking more about some of these research questions at my presentation at INACOL. So please come see me at INACOL if you want more information about research questions 1 and 3. I wanted to know what students identify as the most engaging aspects of being an online student. What do their teachers do that help them, and how does school culture play a role in engaging students? I did survey students about their engagement. Part of my grant money went to providing a $5 gift card incentive for up to all of the students at our school. Unfortunately, I only got about 470 to participate out of 1,100. That's about a 40% return rate. And many of them were our engaged students, but we still found out a lot of great stuff, and I will present that at INACOL. What I'm going to talk about today is the teacher interviews. I really wanted to give voice to my colleagues about the amazing things that they were doing to go beyond our commercial curriculum. That's a national curriculum that we're supposed to use, but a lot of us do a lot of things outside that sort of central curriculum to help students and engage them. And I wanted to learn more about that. I also wanted to learn more about how our culture as a school was affecting teachers and how they interact with students. So question number 1 in my interview with teachers was how do you think school culture affects engagement? And the answers really surprised me. A couple of teachers, had really positive views. They thought school culture was a positive thing and students were really connected. And some students are really excited to be here because they're leaving a school where they were bullied or really negative things were going on, and they feel like it's a fresh start. So that's a good thing. That engages students. Unfortunately, other teachers describe school culture in really negative ways, and that's why I'm here asking for help. A couple of my colleagues, the first words out of their mouth were toxic. And other folks really talked about how it was sort of students and teachers felt vaguely embarrassed about being associated with our school. Students because they felt like it was their last chance, and our school is kind of known as a last chance school in some circles. And teachers felt like we have such low expectations for our students that they were kind of ashamed of where they worked. And that's something that I really want to address. Teachers also describe school culture as one of isolation for both students and colleagues. We, like Florida Virtual School, and I won't identify my school because this is not the most positive view of our school today. We're an all online school. Teachers are scattered throughout the state, and so are our students. So isolation is perhaps part of the online experience, but I don't think it has to be. And the other thing that teachers repeatedly describe that was part of our culture that really hurts how we engage with students are lax deadlines and low expectations. Part B of the research question, what specific elements of culture have the most impact? And one that came up repeatedly was a no deadlines policy. Students can hand in any assignment until the very, very end of the semester. And so if you have different policies, please let me know what they are or how you get around these problems. I'm interested in having a discussion, and I'm very carefully managing my time here so we can have at least 5 minutes to discuss this. And lack of parent involvement also impacts our culture. Students need a little bit more structure than parents would be if their parents need to provide some of the structure that brick and mortar schools would otherwise provide. It's okay. So here are some quotes that support my general conclusions from the way my 23 colleagues talked about school culture. Folks within the school, teachers are a bit divided. Generally, we work well within our departments, but departments don't all talk to each other. They said overwhelmingly that students are picking up on our teachers' disheartenment because we have a lot of mandates, and I'll go to this next quote here. We have a lot of clerical mandates. We chase data a lot. We have to chase students to chase down their data. And that takes up a lot of our time, and people get frustrated because they feel like they don't have the time to work with students. They spend time doing clerical tasks. And so, and speaking up about that, you know, there's a sense of powerlessness or nobody listens to me. And that is being felt by students. And there's a sense also from students that there's some toxicity coming from students towards teachers, because we originally had a group of homeschool kids who were super happy to be here, and those students have somewhat made an exodus, and now we have sort of disgruntled, disengaged students who didn't do well in their previous setting, and often coming with attitudes that we have a really hard time kind of turning around. Being a school of low standards, one of my colleagues said basically when I go out in public and have to talk about what I do, I get nauseous because I don't want to have to explain how low our standards really are. I'm going to skip isolation. I think you can all identify with how that might happen. Our attendance policies are pretty lax. We are all over the state, so it's very hard to pursue truancy court because there are 88 truancy courts in the state, one for every county. And we only require students to log in every 3rd day. And students know that. They play the game. We have to make truancy. There are people who make truancy calls, but not a lot of follow through is done. Low expectations happen because you can basically be a student in our school, log in every 3rd day for a minute, and wait till the absolute end of the semester and know that someone will help you and try to help you pass. And that's the no deadlines and low expectations kind of theme that goes together. They know they don't have to do the work. They don't know they can do a ton of work just right at the end of the semester, and we're so desperate to have them pass our classes, we'll do anything to help them at the very end of the semester. And parents just either aren't involved or are frustrated when they are. So here's kind of the quote that sums it all up. What I've seen over the past several years is a downward spiral in terms of everyone's engagement. So what we're trying to do is turn it around. Yes, Catherine, I know about the research on yes, but it's really hard to track down 88 different truancy courts if you don't have a whole team of people to do it. How do we turn this cultural crisis around? My colleagues are looking to me, since I collected this data and kind of know how frustrated everyone is. I'm presenting this data plus the student survey data at a professional development meeting next week, right after I NACO. I fly home and I present on next Friday. So I'm looking for suggestions. Here are some thoughts I have on how to turn our culture around and kind of take back our school and basically generate more teacher ownership. So at this point, I'd love to hear from all of you about what your culture is like at your school, how you have high expectations for your students and how you foster those and how you express those to students, what your attendance policies are, and if this just means you need to email me, that's great because we might run out of time here, unfortunately. I'm putting my email address in the chat box so we can chat outside this forum if we need to. Thanks so much. We only have 2 minutes left, so I will try to email some of you too. If you want to talk to me, let's exchange emails and or Skype, and we can continue this conversation. This is my Skype.
Great. Thank you so much, Elena and Beth. Definitely, if anybody has any extra information that they'd like to share or questions for Beth and Elena, if you guys could go ahead and share your contact information again as we're wrapping things up here. I'm going to go ahead and move up one slide here to our upcoming webinars. Our next webinars in the MVLRI webinar series will be advertised soon. For those webinars, we're happy to be hosting the Virtual School Leadership Alliance members. The Virtual School Leadership Alliance is a group of about 12 state virtual school leaders who meet monthly to discuss the needs of the field. They wanted to share their research needs with the field, so they're going to go ahead and do a couple of webinars about this. Schools that have signed on to present include North Carolina Virtual Public School, Illinois Virtual School, Michigan Virtual School, Wisconsin Virtual School, and Montana Digital Learning Academy. This will be a great opportunity to get researchers helping these schools answer their dire research needs, and we'll be in touch when those are scheduled. And I want to personally thank everybody for the MVLRI team. On behalf of the MVLRI team, thank you so much for participating in our first collaborative meeting. We might be asking for suggestions on improvement after this first one, and we'd be happy to have anybody give us feedback on that. We really appreciate it. And again, thanks so much. And if you're interested in keeping up with us, email us at mvlri@mivu.org or join us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Enjoy your day, everyone.